Welcome everyone, I am Todd Custom, and on today's video we're going to show you how to make your very own custom face mask. These are very simple to put together and they don't take a lot of material, so I'm going to show you how to get started right now. Okay, before we start, I just wanted to show the one that I made previously. This one is just fabric, bias tape, and there's a little metal armature in here to go around where your nose will be. There are pleats so that it will fit your face comfortably, and there's two sets of ties that are handmade. So I'll show you how I put this together and what materials I used. So to make your mask, you're going to need two panels of a woven fabric, and mine are cut 9 by 6.5 inches tall. And then I've got 4 strips of 14-inch tall by 1.5-inch wide fabric here. And then you're going to need about 20 inches of bias tape, some cutting tools, and then I recommend wonder clips or pins and some kind of a tube turner. And if you don't have one of these, I'll show you some other options for that later. Typically, most of the videos on my channel are for beginners, so I'm going to do my best to be very thorough about how I put this together, but I will also keep it very simple. Now, the first step to making our mask is preparing our straps. So I'm just going to show you how to do one. So I'm going to move these out of the way. And what you want to do is lay this on your ironing board. Now, I've got this right side facing up, and I'm going to fold this in half lengthwise, and I am going to press this completely flush in half all the way across. Okay, so now we're going to do a straight stitch at about a 1/4 inch seam allowance across this raw edge here, and then I'm going to stitch across this edge here, leaving this side over here open. Alright, so my ties are all stitched together. We just stitched on the bottom here, and then I closed these edges by doing a stitch with black thread so you can see it a little bit more easily, and then over here is our open edges. Now, before I turn these right side out, I want to trim just the edge that is sticking out a little bit there so that this has a nice clean turn to it after we're done turning these. Okay, so now we have to turn our ties right side out, and I'm going to be using our tube turner from Femori Cutlery. This thing is amazing. It is very fast, but simply I'm just going to slide on the tube of this fabric on one end, and then when it's all the way on there, I clamp it together, and then I just start pulling the fabric over where that center point is. And I'm going to keep going all the way until I can see, there it is. So now I can see the right side of the fabric. I open it up. I'm just going to scoot this off this, and then I'm going to pull this off here. Now, once that's off there, I can just hold the right side and pull this, and it will end up being completely right side out. Now, if you don't have one of these tube turners and you need to turn a tube of fabric like this, I'm just going to show you how to use a safety pin to do it. Alright, so I've got the closed end of my tie here, and I'm not going to actually pin this through the fabric at all. Now, I'm just going to kind of kink the fabric with my fingers so that it makes kind of a lump, and I'm going to use the spring end of my safety pin and push into kind of the fat part of this fabric right here. Now, this can be kind of tricky to get started, but once it starts working, you're going to notice that a tube of fabric is going to form over your safety pin just like that. And I'm just going to keep pushing this over the safety pin just like that. And I'm going to keep bunching it up like this. And when I can't bunch any more up, I'm going to hold the other end of my safety pin with my fingers and then pull this fabric to the left. So now my safety pin is right here, and I'm just going to, again, keep bunching up the fabric, and then hold it with my right hand and pull the fabric to the left. I'm going to do this all the way until my fabric tube is right side out. Okay, so the right side of the fabric is almost coming out here, so I am going to see it poke out right here. I'm just going to hold that with my right hand and then just pull this with my left all the way until it is right side out. Now I just have to feed the safety pin out, so I'm going to kind of bunch the fabric up and just very slowly and carefully remove the safety pin. So make sure you don't pin the safety pin to the inside of the fabric, otherwise you won't be able to get it out. All right, so my safety pin is out, and that is good. All right, so that was my last tie, and now we just have to press these into shape. All right, so now that we've got all of our tubes done, I want to press these into shape. So I'm actually going to lay this flat so that the center seam is in the middle here, and I'm going to press this from the closed end all the way down to the open end over here. All right, so I've got all 4 of my ties pressed into shape. These look really good like this, and now I get to show you what we do next with these. All right, for the next part, you're going to need your 2 panels of fabric here. So I'm just going to leave one face up, and then I'm going to take one of my ties with the seam facing me, and from about a ½ an inch from the top, I'm going to line up the open edge with the left raw edge of this fabric here. I'm going to do that on the top here, and then I'm going to take another tie and go about ½ an inch from the bottom and match up this raw edge here as well. Now, I'm going to take the other piece of our fabric, and we're going to put these right sides together from that top left corner, matching up this whole left side right here. Now, I'm just going to take some Wonder Clips, and I'm going to put a clip where this top tie is here through all those layers, and then I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom where that bottom tie is, and then I'm just going to put one in the middle here. So now I'm just going to do a straight stitch at a ½ inch seam allowance all the way from the top through all the layers all the way down to the bottom and do a back stitch here. Alright, so now you should have something that looks like this. Now when I open this up, you're going to see that there is a nice clean seam here and that these ties are neatly sewn into those seams right there. So now what I'm going to do is just take the ties and kind of get them out of the way, and we're going to line up our next 2 ties ½ an inch from the top and ½ an inch from the bottom. Now we're going to take all of this fabric and fold it all the way over, and I'm going to hold these in place with my fingers until this fabric matches up with the right side over here. So you should have something that looks kind of like this. Now I'm going to take some more clips, and I'm going to clip where the top tie is, the bottom tie is, and then in the middle just like before. Now we're going to do the same straight stitch down this right edge at a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so now that we have both sides stitched, I can just roll this whole tube of fabric right side out like this. All right, so now you should have something that looks like this. We've got all 4 ties sewn into the side seams, so everything looks nice and clean. All right, now I am just going to kind of pull the ties to the left and then press this left side seam and then do the same thing over here so that we've got nice clean seams. And that looks really good. All right, so now is the part where we're going to put our pleats in like we did on this one here. So when we pull this open, it's going to kind of extend and then fit our face a little bit better. So we're going to show you how to do that on this right now. All right, so this is the back side of my mask, and I can tell because I've got my seams showing on my ties like that. So I want my back face up, and I'm going to fold this in half from bottom to top, and then we're going to press this along this lower edge here. All right, so now open up your mask, and you should see a nice crease in the middle here. So I'm going to take my bottom half, and I'm going to fold this halfway up to where that center crease is, and we're going to press this bottom edge now. Now I'm going to flip the whole thing upside down, and we are going to do the same thing with what would be the top edge, matching up with that center crease, and then pressing the top edge right here. All right, now I'm going to open this up, and you should see 3 distinct creases in the middle that are all kind of pleating the same way. All right, so now I'm going to flip the whole thing over so that I'm looking at the front of our mask here. All right, so because we put creases in the fabric, it should make little waves, so I can see the top ridge here, here, and here. So what we're going to want to do is ½ inch pleats. So I'm going to grab this by the bottom one and pull it up about ½ an inch and try to lay it flat with my fingers like that. And then I'm going to grab my iron And I'm going to press all the way across, so that makes our bottom pleat. Then we're going to do the same thing for the middle, so I'm going to grab that crease, pull it up about 1/2 inch. Make sure everything is nice and flat. And I can press everything below there. And now we're just going to do our top pleat. So I'm going to grab this top edge, roll it up by 1/2 inch. Before you press this, make sure everything looks nice and flat. Alright, so now our mask looks like this, and if I turn this to the side, you can see how our pleated edge looks just like that. So what I'm going to do is take this over the sewing machine and stitch through all those pleats to hold this into place. Now we don't have to pin or clip this into place, but I'm going to do an edge stitch as close as I can all the way up the left side, starting from the bottom and going all the way up to the top, and then I'm going to do the same thing over here. And I am going to show you how I do this on the machine just so you can see how it looks. Alright, so here we are at our sewing machine, and again, this is kind of the pattern of pleats that you should be looking for right here. So I like to start from the bottom of the pleats, so that way I don't have any issues with how they end up laying flat. So I'm going to flip it this way, make sure everything is laying nice and flat here, and I'm going to edge stitch from the right edge, right before where this tie is, all the way up, making sure that I go through all the pleats. So I am going to start and do a back stitch. And again, I'm using black thread to make it easier for you guys to see. So I'm just kind of feeding this in here to make sure that everything stays just the way that we had pressed it. That's looking fine. And when I get to the top, I'm going to do a back stitch. Alright, so here is the left edge of where our pleats are sewn shut, and if I try to pull these pieces of fabric apart, they will not move, which is exactly what we want. So now we have to sew the other side, and I don't want to do it this way because I don't want my presser foot to get caught in any of these pleats. So I'm going to flip the whole thing upside down. Okay, so now once again, starting from the bottom, I am going to edge stitch, do a back stitch, and then make sure that all my pleats lay nice and flat as I'm doing this. I'm going to try to stay as close as I can to that left edge and make sure that I'm going through all of the fabric. And these pleats are wanting to kind of buckle and move a little bit, so I'm just holding it with my finger until my needle gets there. And then I will go all the way up through the top. Alright, perfect. So now we've got something that looks like this, and if I pulled this apart, it should kind of accordion apart, but these edges should stay nice and fixed in place like that where our pleats are. Alright, so we should have something that looks like this. We're almost done. We just have to put bias tape on the bottom, bias tape on the top, and then a little metal piece where the nose is going to go. Alright, so I should have done this while I was still at my cutting mat, but I just need my bias tape to be cut about 1/2 inch extra on either side. So it's going to end up being about 1 inch longer than our actual pattern. So I've got that kind of marked with my fingers there, and I'm just going to cut this. Alright, so as you can see, my bias tape is about 1/2 inch longer on either side of the bottom of where our mask is. Alright, now if you've never sewn with bias tape before, it's very simple actually. It's just 2 inches of fabric that are folded over like that. And I'm going to do a whole other video on how bias tape works and some other techniques, but for this video I'll show you the basics of what you need to know. Alright, so now it's time to sew the bias tape on the bottom edge of our mask. So I'm going to line this up so that the bottom is getting ready to feed into the machine. Now what I want to do is open up my bias tape so that it looks like this, and I'm going to line up this corner of my bias tape with the corner of our mask here. And this needs to go about 1/2 inch over the edge of our mask. So it should look something like that, and if I fold this over, you should have about an extra 1/2 inch of bias tape right there. So now all we have to do is just sew the right edge of our bias tape with the bottom edge of our mask right in this first crease of bias tape right here. So I'm just going to line up my bias tape and my mask, and I'm going to start sewing right in this first ditch of bias tape right here. I'm going to do a back stitch at the front. Now I'm just holding this with my fingers. Now I'm going to sew all the way across, right through that first crease of bias tape, making sure that these edges are perfectly flush with each other. And when I get to the other end, I am going to do a back stitch and then cut my thread. So I'm going to take my bias tape and I'm going to fold it towards me so that we've got a nice smooth edge of our bias tape right here. Now, we're going to collapse the bias tape the way that it naturally wants to. So I'm going to roll this all the way around the seam. Try to make sure that this all stays nice and flat. And then it should kind of sandwich that entire seam in there just like that. And then this is going to go all the way down like that. So on top, because we folded that bias tape, it will kind of sandwich everything up and it's going to look nice and clean. Now, once you've got your bias tape nice and polished on one side, I'm going to put a clip there, and then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side here. Alright, so now on the other side, I'm going to fold down that 1/2 inch of bias tape, and then I'm going to wrap it around the seam. Now, once you've got your bias tape looking the way that you want on that side, you can put a clip right there. So now we've got either side of our bias tape folded over and polished looking. So now I'm just going to put wonder clips on the rest of the bias tape, so that's going to hold it into place. Perfect, so this is how the bottom of my mask will look, but this is the back side. So I'm going to flip this over and we are going to sew this on the top side of the mask. Okay, so before we start, I'm going to hold this in place with my finger and take out our first clip. And then I'm going to line up to do an edge stitch as close as I can on the left side of this bias tape right here, okay? So I'm going to lower my needle by hand and make sure that that is right on that left edge of the bias tape. Now I'm going to do a couple of stitches front and back. And now I am just going to hold this nice and tight, and we're going to do an edge stitch all the way along the inside of this bias tape right here. Now when I get to the bottom, I want to take that pin off and also hold it with my finger to make sure that we don't lose that nice folded crease. Stitch all the way, and then do a back stitch at the end. Alright, so our bottom bias tape is done. That looks really good, and you just want to make sure that your stitches went through both sides of the bias tape, which ours did, and I like our nice orange accent on the bottom. Now I just realized we can do the top bias tape the same way we did on the bottom for the top, then we can slide our armature in there for our nose piece that we're going to put in at the end. So I'm going to put on the top bias tape right now. And then once I'm done with this, I will show you how to put a little nose piece in there, and then we will finish this up. Alright, so our top and bottom are done, which look very good, and the last thing to do is to put some kind of an armature in where the nose piece is going to go. A lot of people use like pipe cleaners or floral wire. I don't have any of that right now, so I'm going to use this paper clip right here, which is going to be fine. I think this is about a 4-inch paper clip, but I'm just going to bend this so it is as straight as I can get it. I thought I had some pipe cleaners here, but apparently I don't, so this is going to do just fine. Alright, now this is as straight as I could get a paper clip in a couple of moments here. So now I'm just going to slide it in the top of where we had that rolled bias tape there. So now I'm just going to kind of push this until it is centered. And it feels like that is pretty much in the middle, about right there. All right, now normally I would do this with like orange thread so you couldn't see it, but you will be able to see this very easily with black thread. So I'm just gonna do a little bar stitch right here on the right side of that, and then I'm gonna do another one just to the left of where that is there. All right, so this thing is all done. I know this looks ridiculous with these 2 stitches right here, but it's gonna keep this in place, and now I can bend our paper clip so that it's gonna go where our nose goes, and we can extend this out. But now it's time to try this on and see how it looks, so let's give it a shot. All right, so my mask is all done and my nose piece is fitted to me, so I am gonna put this on, doing the top ties over my ears first. And then I am just gonna pull down the bottom so that the pleats relax like that. Make sure this is nice and fitted, and then I'm gonna do the bottom ties down low. All right, and this thing turned out great. It's actually really comfortable. Hopefully yours turned out really well. I hope you had some fun fabrics to work with. So if I was gonna go out right now, I would just take my hair down and put on a cowboy hat, grab some glasses, and I am ready to go. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I really hope it was helpful for you to make your own mask. I really hope all of you stay safe right now and you take good care of each other. If you have any questions about how we made this, please feel free to ask me in the comments. Otherwise, thank you again so much for your support, and we will see you in our next video.